Hi, I'm Nish, and I'm making a completely custom 80s themed Orcs and Goblins fantasy army, and in this video I'm going to take you through my design process, give you tips and tricks on how to sculpt your own miniature from scratch, and tell you the story of the Great Griffin Troll. Welcome to Goblins. For those of you who don't know, Goblins is an original setting, kind of a cross between Labyrinth, Adventure Time, and Tears of the Kingdom. I've been meaning to sculpt a model that I could mold and cast for a while now, and I figured it was about time. This sculpt will be the first official Goblins model, but before I start sculpting, let me show you how I came up with the design. I knew I wanted to make some sort of bird troll, but I didn't have a clear idea what it would look like. I have aphantasia, which means I can't see things in my head. So to develop ideas, I collect a bunch of images that I like, I do sketches taking the things I like from those images, and then I reiterate until I have a design that I like. For this design, I'm taking heavy inspiration from two of my favorite illustrators, Brian Froud and Chris Riddell. I started by drawing out some troll face designs that I liked. I knew I wanted my troll to have a long hooked nose/beak, and I was leaning towards making him look a little more animalistic. I really wasn't satisfied with the look of my first few sketches, so I started branching out into more humanoid troll-like faces. And then I kind of stumbled into this design. He looks like a crotchety old man, which is not at all what I intended going into this project, but really made me laugh. And that gave me the idea to make this guy like a bumbling guard. I feel like it's a classic fantasy trope to have a bumbling guard comic relief character that challenges the heroes. The idea of a bumbling guard, crotchety old man really sold me, so I took that face and I started working on a body to match that idea. This process took way longer than the face. I went back and forth between more humanoid legs and more bird-like legs. I couldn't quite find a silhouette that I liked. I started looking at Warhammer models as inspiration and found a design I liked that was a hybrid between the Rotgut Troggoths and the Lord of Change. I like that this grounded my 80s aesthetic back into the world of Warhammer, and also having these two 3D models to reference would be a huge help later on. I fiddled with the designs for a bit and ended up with this as my concept art. This will be my reference for the rest of the sculpt. With the concept art done, it was time to start making the armature. I cannot stress enough how important this stage is. The armature dictates the proportions, the pose, and the style of the sculpt, and it is worth spending the time to do this right. I decided to go with the more bird-like legs, which meant my legs had an extra joint in them. This was particularly tricky because I wanted to make a very dynamic pose. This is where the Lord of Change 3D model really helped, but I still messed up the first version I made. I made it way too big, so I started from scratch. On my second attempt, I had a Troggoth on my desk that I could use as a scale reference. I really want this model to fit alongside old hammer trolls or Troggoths, so the scale is really important. With a lot of finagling, I got the leg armatures looking good and then glued them to a piece of balsa wood. This will make it easier to sculpt, and I used hot glue to make it easily removable. For the rest of the body, I tried a new armature building technique. When I use wire to create an armature spine, it always ends up in the wrong place. So instead of using wire, I built out the body using condensed tinfoil. Using a little hot glue in between layers, I built up the form piece by piece. This was a lot more similar to working with clay. Using the condensed tinfoil mixed with hot glue created a really strong armature, and using this technique I was able to build out the form closer to my concept art. And as an added bonus, when I went to add the armature wire arms, I was able to just poke them right through the body. This was so intuitive, and I will 100% be using this technique again. As I was building out the form, I scaled up my concept art on my computer so that I could directly compare my model to the concept art. This was really helpful to create the kind of dynamic slopes of the body. I was incredibly proud of how this armature came out, and it got me really hyped to start sculpting. I decided to only use green stuff for this model because I find a mix of materials is hard to see if the sculpt is successful or not when it's not primed, and I'm not going to be able to prime this model before I send it off. I started with the feet because they're my least favorite thing to sculpt. I usually sculpt them last, which means I do a bad job, so to avoid the inspiration fatigue, I did them first and got it over with. I was going for a kind of hybrid between troll and bird foot, and it took a while, I'm not gonna lie. When I finally finished the first foot, I realized it was at the wrong angle, so I cut it off the base and repositioned it. This luckily wasn't too hard. So I sculpted the second foot the same way I did the first, and throughout this project, if I ever had leftover green stuff, I would throw it onto the model in a place that I needed to bulk out, that I knew I would cover later. Next I moved on to the legs. It was a weirdly difficult challenge putting muscle groups onto these bird-human hybrid legs. But this is again where the Lord of Change model really came in clutch. Here is a super important tip. When working with green stuff, it's important to let things fully cure before working on another section of the model, because inevitably you will accidentally touch the part you just sculpted, leaving fingerprints on it, or worse, completely smushing the part you just worked on. So to avoid this, I'm going to be working in sections. In this case, while the legs dry, I'm going to start sculpting the face. The face gave me a lot of trouble. I knew there were a lot of details to sculpt and I wouldn't be able to do it all in one go, so I decided to go with a kind of blank canvas skull approach. I started with a tinfoil skull, and then I quickly realized that I would need an armature for the nose because green stuff's not great at holding its shape without an armature. So I started over with the armature in place and tried to get the proportions of the rest of the face right. To finish off the beak shape, I added a pre-baked sculpy spike from another project. I was really carefully comparing my sculpt to the concept art at this stage because I was basically trying to sculpt a silhouette without any of the details, and that, it turns out, is not easy to do. This took a lot of work, but eventually I was happy enough with it and I moved on. And this might have been my biggest mistake. I avoided sculpting the details on the face because in my head I thought, I always start with the face because it's the most fun, but if I start with the other parts of the body, I'll give them the attention they deserve. But because I didn't sculpt the face first, I didn't have a good sense of who the character was. I think subconsciously I was sculpting the rest of the body as a placeholder. In art school they taught us not to start with the focal point, don't paint the face first. But when you're sculpting, the face can create the character that you carry throughout the rest of your sculpt. I didn't know what I was supposed to be making until I sculpted the face, and I got really dejected. I got lazy because the whole sculpt was so uninspiring, and it actually made my sculpting worse. This change in operations completely backfired on me. So finally I tried sculpting the face, and I hated it. I tried sculpting the details and they all looked wrong. I tried sculpting the feathers and they looked terrible. And I was really losing faith that this project was gonna work out. One particular frustration were the eyebrows. My concept art had these big, dramatic, old man, feathery eyebrows, but when I went to sculpt them, the green stuff wouldn't hold its shape. This green stuff's not great at holding its shape without an armature. I realized to make the face details I wanted, I needed an armature to work off of. So I glued on some scrap plastic from a GW kit as an armature, and it finally started to feel like my concept art. This change in silhouette was exactly what the piece was missing. So I went back in and tried sculpting the face details again, and it was still a struggle, but I started to have fun again. I looked up some reference images and learned how to sculpt feathers properly. I sculpted them like you would shingles, working in rows that kind of build off of each other. I spent all day sculpting feathers, but in doing so, I finally found the character. This is the Great Griffin Troll, guardian of the mountain pass. A rickety rope bridge hidden high within the most hazardous peaks. For centuries, this sentinel has stood guard on this spot, and never has a traveler passed. The perilous mountain voyage claims its victims before they have a chance to reach the bridge. Unchallenged, the troll has grown old. His feathers have begun to shed, but still, ever vigilant, he waits. I'm so excited to add this model and this story to the world of Goblins, but I promised you some Goblins lore, so here it is. Before the Great Goblin era, the ancients as they are known now held great stock in prophecy. Magic weapons were forged only to be wielded by the heroes of legend. But in their hubris, the enchanters forgot to account for one thing: goblins. They didn't believe in the potential of goblin magic, but belief is a powerful thing not to be underestimated. All goblins in this world believe they are the heroes of legend, and because they believe it, they are. The magic reserved for the noble guards, the royal families, and the heroes of legend can all be wielded by any ordinary goblin. Some believe that it is this magic that allowed the goblins to live on while all the ancients died out. If every goblin believes they are the hero of legend, then the magic of the prophecy will protect them so they can live on to save the world. But the history of the ancients is mostly forgotten because goblins don't like to write stuff down. They tell their own stories about the strange, alien-like arcane instruments and ruins left behind. They misuse and repurpose these legendary magical artifacts for whimsy and fun. Goblins live to live, not to fulfill stinky prophecies. Goblins and goblins are extremely varied, from hobgoblins to bog goblins. Their anatomy, birth, lifespan, abilities are all wildly different. The one thing that unifies them is that they all believe they are goblin. And because they believe it, they are. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, consider subscribing. Making videos is my absolute favorite thing to do, and it is my dream to do it full time, and I am getting close. If you want to help me get there, the best way to support me is over on Patreon. Huge thank you to my current Patreon supporters. I cannot tell you how much it means to me, and truly how much it helps. There's a link to a playlist with all the Goblins videos in the description down below. If you haven't seen them all, check it out. I really hope to get this model out to you as soon as possible. If you're interested in buying one, please let me know so I know how many I need to make. As always, let me know what weird creatures you want to see me add to the world of Goblins. I'll see you next time. Bye.